Conference with Jean-Luc AYOUN. Lima, Peru. February 23, 2020. Well. Okay. Hello, everyone, and sorry we're late, we had the wrong address. Oh, right. Right. Have any of our Peruvian friends here heard about what I was doing or not doing? The channelings, okay. And, that's great. So the goal today, as you've seen, the title, is communication, perception, if you like, also resonance. The resonance that we have called Agape resonance, with the different versions. Beyond words, of course, the important thing today, more than yesterday, is to live the truth, that is to say, to remember who you are. For this, there is only one condition. You have nothing to look for. As long as you are looking for anything, you are simply not available to the truth. Truth, what is it? A long time ago, Enlil spoke of relative truth, absolute truth, and then, of course, truths that depend on the point of view, that is to say, on the location of consciousness. Today, the only way to remember is to forget, without rejecting, without denying, but accepting that everything that is related to consciousness, and it goes very far, energy, perception, whatever it is, whether it is clairvoyance, intuition, travel, getting out of the body, none of that will make you live the truth. This does not mean that you should not use energies, perceptions, but the energies, the vibrations, the perception, the feeling, which have been so useful for many, are obstacles to living the truth. The absolute truth, as Enlil used to say, cannot deceive you. As I said, you can only recognize yourself, it is unstoppable. In these times of illusory history, where we are actually living what has been named, in the texts whatever they may be, not only in the Bible, we are living the revelation, the apocalypse. This revelation tells us, and what I am telling you here is not mental, what I am telling you here is not a perception, what I am telling you here is not a vibration. I claim to know a little bit about energies and vibrations. I have worked for 25 years with crystals, with extraordinary results, real openings, but no crystal will lead you to the truth, it is impossible. Truth cannot be perceived, it cannot be felt, it cannot be linked to an energy, it cannot be linked even to what is called the vibral or the supramental. The truth is that consciousness, spirituality, energies, vibrations, perceptions, which are useful in this world. Of course, I worked for 25 years with energies, with crystals, it works in therapy, very, very well, but it is not the truth. Truth is elsewhere, it cannot be sought, it cannot be a perception. It is a state of indescribable love. The words are very weak, the truth is the life. And I specify from the outset, as long as you have not lived it, your conscience can only refuse it. The consciousness, I say it and I repeat it, and the supra-consciousness, belong to illusion, to dream, to Maya. There is no one, there are no worlds, there are no dimensions, there are no beings of light. There is only you. When you sleep, do you know the world exists? No. Today, without any prerequisites or preconditions, many brothers and sisters are living the truth. This truth, it is common to each character, nothing can be missing. Everything is already there, inside you. Consciousness is a perverse game that will take you to always more perceptions, to always more vibrations, to always more visions, to always more experiences. I have had a chance, through AYOUN dimensions, to truly explore all that is explorable, from the astral worlds to the source, to extremely high dimensions. It's all just passing by. You will never pass. The whole problem today is simply to accept. I am not asking you to believe, but to accept that the world is you. There is no more devil than God. There have certainly been great beings that we all know, according to our experiences, according to our religions, according to our lives, but all this is a total delusion. When we remember, while living it, who we are, there is no more devil, God, good and evil. I am telling you this while being well aware that in this world, in this illusion, good and evil are omnipresent, everywhere. Once again, this is not a denial or a refusal to see, quite the contrary. It is a crossing and an experience of all these states, of all these dimensions, which led to a point in time, and as we are countless to live it and to say, that none of this is true. You are pure felicity, you were never born, all this is an illusion, which you do not have to run away from or reject. And if you place yourself in the posture of acceptance, which is not a belief, I do not ask you to believe in anything, at that moment, of course, the energies, I feel them all the time, the whole Marian channel is always there, the double terrace of the heart is there, the wave of life is there, the chakras are open, the doors are open, the stars are open, it has been useful, it has been important, but today it is a burden. Freedom and truth will never, never depend on a chakra, on an energy, on the opening of new bodies, or even on the activation of the Merkaba. It is only when you're in silence, I said it in acceptance, when you accept to let yourself cross, with the same quality of love, whether it is in front of an archangel, an engine or a horrible energy, embrace. If you do this, without trying to understand, without trying to oppose, without trying to analyze perception or visions, you will discover the truth. You will live it. The whole problem is that evidently the consciousness, I am not talking about the ego and the mind, I am talking about the consciousness in its nobler sense, when it is accepted as something that is just passing by, you will really discover and live that you are the joy, that ineffable beauty, no matter what you have to live. The consciousness always needs to explain, to understand. It is linked to the past, it is linked to history, it is linked to the future, but you are none of that. Again, I can't convince you of that, it's impossible, you can only live it. Of course, for all those who perceive the energies, who have lived all these energies since you trust dimensions, and sometimes long before, for me, it is almost since I was a child, all this is a vast fraud. Once again, to heal the body or the energy, if I need, I use crystals, but what is wrong is to pretend that with a vision, with a vibration or with an expansion of consciousness, that some people have already been living for a very long time, because the supramental has been arriving on Earth since 1984, 36 years, but the supramental that has been perfectly described, not only by me, but long before, for example, by Sri Aurobindo and many others, is a total fraud. What I want to tell you by this is not to reject anything, understand my words well. When there is an energy of shit, coming, I feel it, of course. What do we all do when we feel energies? Well, if we are Catholics, we go and do our rosary beads, we go and do an Evan at St. Michael's or St. Rita's, for example. It works, of course, but today, all that is a burden. Freedom does not depend on any circumstance, truth does not depend on any story, and yet I am here, I am also telling you a story. We came to Peru, to meet the people, the places, of course, out of curiosity, out of pleasure too, but we don't wait to be liberated by any place, nor by any energy, nor by any master. Now it so happens that at the level of the functioning of the consciousness, there is a relay called the brain, and the brain can only exist through the consciousness, or conversely, the consciousness can only exist through the brain, through the principle of duality and exclusion. I don't want to give you a course in neuroscience, that would be very complicated, and we don't have the time, and that's not the point. Just know that every human being, until he is really free, is permanently subject to judgment, through certain structures. I'm not going to go into the anatomical details, which are located in the archaic brain, which is called the reptilian brain, as if by chance, which spends its time training consciousness, through two circuits which it called neurological, which it called reward and punishment. All our decisions, buying a car, getting divorced, getting married, absolutely everything you see, feel, perceive, touch, life, will be systematically colored by this judgment, whether we like it or not. The only way to do that in those cases, and I've been developing this for the last 2 years, in neuroscientific terms, is called resiliency, resilience. In terms of us, the public, who are not neuroscientists, resilience is what I call acceptance. We all have problems in life, even when we live the truth, because history continues. It is not a question of running away from it, but when you live the truth, there is really this resilience. And once again, you cannot, nor can you be deceived, when you have seen and lived the swindle of consciousness. We're anterior to consciousness, we're anterior to form, we have simply forgotten it. The circumstances of the history we are living today are precisely what allows us to remember who we are. As I said as ever, I am each one of you, and each one of you is me, and each one of you is all the others. The world is within, the consciousness is a projection. Acceptance will create, what I've called the crossing, no matter what happens to you. I'm not saying it's easy. If I take my example, I was in bed for the first time in my life for almost a month with the flu. Neither the crystals, nor the colloidal silver, nor the light, cured me. And in all situations that you live today, in this period, from the moment you accept, from the moment you embrace, I have repeated it for years, you will cross over, and you will see who you are and you will live it. So for those who had visions, who travel, I'm going to take an author who has been quite well known, who is Carlos Castaneda. Carlos Castaneda has spoken to you, and we are also in a country here where you have many entheogens, ayahuasca, mescaline, peyote, all these products, salvinorin as well, all these products have been studied in neuroscience. Castaneda took some, of course. Until now, the beings who had access to this exit out of the body, not in the astral, I am not talking about astral there, were attracted by colorful visions, by worlds, but the truth, it is not there. The truth is, what has been called in the heart of the heart, in the silence, in the immutability, whether you go, amazed, dumbfounded, and you will realize that you are the whole of the worlds, the whole of the entities or whatever they are. All is really seen, and when you live it, you will see the fraud of all those worlds, of all that spirituality, which has brought us to this point. I've been in energy since I was a child. Before I was a doctor, I had a fortune teller's office when I was very young. I used to do direct clairvoyance, I used to do clairvoyance with tarot cards, I worked a lot on what we call expansions of consciousness, whether it be with crystals, whether it be with various tools, including entheogens, and I tell you that all this today is useless. Today, you just have to be there, where you are in your life, at the age where you are, with your joys, with your most horrible sufferings, just accept them. Accept it, do not try to react. Do not try to understand, just let yourself go through it. And just behind you, you will discover who you are, beyond form, beyond worlds, and when you find yourself, it is total liberation and freedom. You're evidently still in this body, perfectly lucid, perfectly present, but you are no longer fooled, and that changes everything, but really. So of course, if I were the only one to experience it, all those who live the supra-consciousness, the perceptions, the energies, tend to say that I am crazy. The problem is that we are millions of crazy people today. There are millions of us, and more every day, discovering the truth. The dream continues, you get up every morning, you eat, you make love, you're obliged to get dressed, to wash yourself, the energies are still there, the vibrations are still there, the perceptions are still there, but they do not drag you down anymore. You remain in what is called time zero, or if you prefer, what has also been called the present instant. Everything else today, the expansions of consciousness, the channeling, even the Aram, have brought us what they had to bring us to remember. Today it is time to remember, but you cannot find that in your consciousness, you cannot find that in your past, you cannot find that in the future, it is impossible. No state of consciousness, even the most subtle, and I tell you, I am not exaggerating, I really had the chance to experience astral times, when I was young and I was doing direct clairvoyance, I was going out, I had the solar plexus destroyed, and it was really pure clairvoyance. I could read a license plate to someone who was 10,000 miles away. Just a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago, sorry, I went out of my body, I went to people's homes in a beautiful body of light, but the body of light that I had was not mine, I could borrow any form of light. And there are brothers and sisters who have lived it. At the time of care requests, I came out of my body, and they saw me. I could arrive in the form of an eagle, an Elohim, Christ, Mary, anyone, and those who felt the energies felt it. And I could see everything, even in the dark, I could see everything in people, until Bida came and said to me, "But you are crazy." He told me, "It's useless." I said to him anyway, "What do you mean, it's no use?" I go out of my body, I see everything, but everything, when I say everything, everything, and I act immediately. And it was effective 100% of the time. He said to me, "It's useless. Put yourself in my shoes." I was finally getting to something incredible where I could see everything, go out of my body into any light body, go into any vessel, go wherever I wanted, and Bida said to me, "It's useless." So we went straight to the hands of light, fighting. And then I told him, well, what do I do then? He said, you embrace. He said to me, you don't need to see, when someone asks you something, embrace them. You don't need a photo, you don't need a date of birth, you need a last name and a first name. And even back then I used to make appointments at fixed times. And then I would greet people. I became them, that is to say that instead of going out, I took their essence, they entered into me. Really, I became them, until I realized that there was neither me nor the other, and that as long as I remained in this dialectic of me and the other, I nourished a form of duality, of course. And then afterwards with the Agape resonances, do you know what that means? Agape is a Greek word that simply means unconditional love, but much more. It is a love that escapes from us and is the same for everyone, that we cannot control. It emanates from ourselves, because there are very particular structures that have nothing to do with the hard kekra, which is called the double terrace or the terrace. This love cannot be directed, it cannot be measured, it cannot be decided, it is a permanent flow that escapes from you, from your heart, no matter what you say, no matter what you do. That is Agape love. It is, other people, well, no matter the name, would tell you it is the love of God for mankind. It is a man who is capable of expressing, like St. Francis of Assisi, for example, and many others. There have been so many of them. Look at the teachings of Gemagalgani, of Teresi of Lisieux, and of so many others. It is a state of indescribable love, which cannot be confused with a feeling, with the other loves that the Greeks gave, the filial love of the mother for the child, erotic love, the sexual relationship, filial love, philosophical, in short. The Greeks determined 7 loves. So, of course, we took the word agape, not to raise intellectualism, but simply because the word agape, there is no translation, there is only Greek. Agape is a vibration, which does not install you in the truth, but which brings you closer to the truth, that is to say which will install you in what has been called for years the heart of the heart. For years the 4 pillars of the heart have been evoked. Humility, simplicity, there are 2 others, the path of childhood, transparency. What is transparency? It is exactly that, it is letting oneself be crossed. Being transparent means not stopping anything. If you embrace everything, even the death, even the loss, of a child, a husband, a parent, a brother, a sister, right behind, it does not take away the suffering, of course, but right behind, there is this truth, and that is where you remember, not before. So of course, for those who live it, it is so easy, and remember what I told you in the preamble, your consciousness, as long as you still believe you are that consciousness, cannot accept it, it is impossible. On the other hand, you can use your consciousness, simply to accept, to embrace, to let yourself go through, that is true transparency, and then you will be free. Of course, I am not going to come back, I am going to let you speak soon for your questions about this. I am not going to go back over all the details of the history, of the primary anomaly, of Agape, to give a few elements in relation to what I was doing 2 years ago. Now I am not doing it anymore, but what is wonderful is that I am no longer. My life is inscribed in time, my history is inscribed in time, of course, like everyone else. But when I'm asked for something, the moment I get the request, I do it. But I determine what time it will be for the person. In the past or in the future, with the same efficiency. But that's not because he's Jean-Luc or young, you're all capable of doing that, without exception. If you accept, without believing, it is not a question of belief. If you accept to use your conscience in this way, in 2 minutes, you are free. I'll show you. By the way, our friend wanted there to be Tibetan bowl for. I said no, for a reason that is very simple. I still use, it happens to me from time to time, the Tibetan bowl with even crystals in it, but simply because I wanted to make you live, in the end, not now, otherwise there will be no one afterwards, this truth. How can I do that? You cannot open the heart of the other, but you can create a resonance that I have called spatial, interdimensional, that does not correspond to me, nor to the other in the care, but that is to say that I am in space, and I am taking you into the space of this room. You're at time 0 and you are delocalizing in consciousness, staying there, without leaving the body, well you are going to live it. This is more and more the case in encounters, wherever they are. Well, this is a conference, it is not a meeting. Meetings last a few days, but it can be done in 2 minutes. But then again, it's not me doing it, it's not you doing it either. It is a state of availability that creates this resonance in space, and that you will recognize. That's the way it always happens. So of course, in the encounters, there is Feham, there is Eba, there are the satsangs, there is OMA, there is Baidu, so there is a range of energies that come to impact, to open you, to allow us to remain in this silence and in this embrace. But the more the months go by, the easier it is, because we are, as I said, very, very many to live it, and this information of zero time, this ineffable joy of remembering, it is everywhere in the air, everywhere in the land, that is the good news. I could tell you the same thing, but with a very scientific side, the Schumann resonance, the frequencies of the resonance of the Earth, of the ionosphere, the intensity of the cosmic radiation that we receive. Of course, and you may know it, the explosion of Betelgeuse, the star that is at the top of Orion, which was announced a long time ago, the Nephilim, who are not negative beings contrary to what some people say, the Nephilim are the equivalent of giants. In other mythologies, they have been called titans. They are the beings who live, for some, either on Orion, especially on Anilim, one of the 3 stars of Orion's harness, and especially on Betelgeuse. Well, Betelgeuse, star of the constellation of Orion. You see, this can go very, very far. I will not, but to show the beauty of this story that does not exist, the beauty of the dream of creation. Betelgeuse, it comes from Bethel in Hebrew, from the letter Beth, the house. And the Nephilim, at the very beginning of O You Trust Dimensions, I am not the first to have spoken of it, even at the time, Nostradamus had spoken of it, that the freedom of the earth would be found again when the arrow of Sagittarius would be delivered, shot, and that at that moment everything would be revealed. Then, of course, everything is revealed, the machinations of the Illuminatis, the bad boys as Omriam said, but, beyond these revelations, the most important revelation is, of course, remembering who we are. We wake up for good, and all the brothers and sisters who experience it all describe the same thing. This unspeakable state of love that is there, that emanates constantly, whether you are sick, whether you are angry, whether you are joyful, it is something that is there permanently. And all the brothers and sisters who are experiencing it, they say the same thing, at the moment they're experiencing it. But yes, it is obvious, I remember. I am no conscience, all this has been just a dream. And speaking of dreams, it is still preferable, in the dream, that it is a dream rather than a nightmare. It is more pleasant to dream than to have a nightmare. The problem is that the dream, it has been going on for so long, since what I have seen, and what all the brothers and sisters who live it see, is that all these worlds are just passing by. The truth, it cannot pass, it is immutable. But once again, that does not make you a Superman or an ethereal being who hovers as they say. No, on the contrary, you are fully there, fully present, and it is acceptance that makes you fully present, and I would say even more, what is happening to all of us, in our lives today, at whatever level, even the most terrible things, are only there to awaken us. In fact, we are only dreaming, we are only believing in another world. Look at the number of brothers and sisters who are beginning to experience the opening of consciousness, of supra-consciousness, and who are telling you about a new land. There is no new earth, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the myth of creation. It has never been real, so much so that in neuroscience, we end up with exactly the same thing, and the scientists today tell us, beyond neuroscience, that this world is a computer simulation. In fact, you know the film Matrix, Keanu Reeves said it. This film is not a film, it's a documentary. That's right, it's a documentary. All the beings who have succeeded one another in history, and I am talking in particular about the beings I have channeled, have all been there to bring us, whether it was, of course, the Commander, Sri Aurobindo, Ram, Chandra Babuji, all the others, have made us converge towards this point of resolution which is at the heart of the heart. What difference does it make in life, you will tell me? My life is not happier or unhappier, but it is crossed, and that what happens there, showing the heart in the center of the chest, which can never be extinguished, even when you're angry, even when you are sick, is the only truth, that we take it and look at it with all the points of view of the brothers and sisters who live it. Everything else today is a total illusion. You do not need anything. You need to eat. You need to pay your rent. Yes, you need to pay your taxes. It is normal. We are participating in a common dream, but for what you are, you strictly do not need anything. So, of course, I could talk to you about crystals in detail. I could talk to you more about neuroscience, or about history itself, because it's true that history, even if it's a dream, I find it particularly exciting right now, with all that's being revealed. When you see everything that's happening, really, objectively, you can see that it's chaos. Everybody, except those who still have their head in the hole, you can see that there are huge changes taking place. You just have to turn on the TV, the radio, to see that you're not in something linear, something usual, but in something totally new. It has always been said, for those who are following you trust dimensions, and I repeat this sentence to you because it is important, it is that the more the chaos of the world will grow and the more you'll be in joy. But not in stupid joy because it is chaos, it is precisely because it is chaos that you are free. And here I am not only talking about society, I'm also talking about your life, my life, everybody's life. Joy, it's here. As long as you believe, you have to make an effort that was justified when we had to raise the vibrations to touch the supraconsciousness, when we had to perceive, when we had to raise the vibrations. Today, it is no longer at all that, because today, the good news, it is here, it is for all of you, it is everywhere, and that, in the last 15 minutes of our conversation, we will come back to this experience, we will live it. But in the meantime now, we will continue the story, and I am going to give you the opportunity to ask all the questions you want, even about the dream, or the crystals, whatever you want. So all it takes is for someone to raise their hand for the first question. You forget for the moment what I have told you, and we will leave it at the end of the conference. Translator. So he would like to know what are the elements of each crystal, what are the crystals of each element rather. So, wait, in general you can establish correspondences between crystals. The very first correspondences that have been established are not in relation to the elements, but in relation to the planets. Steiner had described this perfectly, and an Italian astronomer had demonstrated, before Steiner, it's very old, that if you take a telescope that you point at Venus, and that on the other side, instead of putting your eye on it, you put a solution that will crystallize, chloride, salt quite simply, well when you turn your telescope towards Venus, the solution will crystallize according to a crystallization system that we call cubic. If you turn your telescope on Saturn, and you always put the salt solution there instead of the eye, you'll have a rhombohedral crystallization system. So, quartz is silica which provides the basis of time, computers, watches, silica is ubiquitous, silica is a rhombohedral crystallization system, the basis of time is obtained in the solution towards Saturn. When you put the telescope to Saturn, you crystallize here, like the rock crystal, it happens that Saturn is the master of time. So there is indeed a correspondence between the 7 crystallization systems, the 7 planets of traditional astrology, and, of course, the 7 chakras. Now, in Chinese medicine, for example, we are not talking about the 4 elements that our brother was talking about, but we are talking about the 5 movements, the wuxing, yes, 5, kissing, movements. The 5 movements, the movement of the wood, the Chinese told us that it was linked to spring, to the color green, and all the crystals that are going to be green will act on this movement, and on this element. So the Chinese, they talk about the 5 movements and the 4 elements. Water is also the movement of water, there is a correspondence in this case. The stone that I have called the leader, that is to say the stone that really treats the water element, is the same as the stone that treats the movement of water, it is black tourmaline. That's the black tourmaline. The one that acts on the fire element, also acts on the movement of fire, and it is the ruby. It is, by the way, I will give you the 3 other stones, there are 4 elements and 5 movements, it is by the way the stones that were used in history, in the last Atlantis, for example, the Atlantean hospitals, they were airlocks, like arches where we passed through, these arches were powered by sunlight and mirrors, and crystals, and each time one passed through one of these airlocks, there were obviously 7 doors or 7 airlocks, each time the corresponding subtle bodies were revealed and treated. To come back to the elements, we still have the air element and the earth element. The air element, a stone that is extremely used, and it is also the movement of the air, extremely used in medicine. In any case, when I was a doctor, it is the stone that we use almost 10 times a day. It is aquamarine. It is also the stone of the astral body, of the emotional body, but it is, above all, as you were talking about the elements, the stone of the air element. We've also got earth, imperial topaz. But nevertheless, it is much easier, so here it is the doctor who speaks. It is much easier to treat, not the elements but the chakras, with the stones that are besides in the book that has been translated, crystals and being, where everything has been given there. So, in therapy in any case, after 25 years of medicine, it is what is most effective, it is to work with crystals on the chakras. So of course, we have friends here who have done crystal training that lasts 10 days, and I give all the techniques, work on the auras, on the acupuncture points, everything that can work with crystals. What works best anyway is the color reference system, not the crystallization system. We talked earlier about the telescope that gave such and such a crystallization system. What works best is the color of the crystals, provided that we do not confuse the colors as seen by clairvoyant on the chakras, which have nothing to do with colors. When we tell you, the first chakra is red, orange, that does not exist. When you were told that the first chakra is red, if a clairvoyant tells you that he sees the first red chakra, I would wonder about his clairvoyance. On the other hand, the first chakra is in a state of energy that corresponds to red. It is not the same thing. When you see a red crystal, it is not light, it is a material color. So you must not confuse mental colors, real colors, and action by colors. For example, we can use light to heal. In ocular medicine, on the chakras, we will take a lamp and we will put filters. If I put a white lamp with a red filter behind it, I have red light, whose wavelength corresponds to red, 450 nanometers, or whatever the figure is. When I have a crystal in my hand, red, it doesn't emit red light, it's red because it absorbs all radiation except red. So you see, there are a lot of people who have made the relationship between, for example, the colors that the Tibetans give, 7 chakras red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet, which have nothing to do with what I see in clairvoyance, which simply mean a state of energy. Red, low energy level, purple high energy level. But the stones we are going to use are going to be different. For example, for the first chakra, it is not the red stones, it is the black stones. Here, we won't go into details, it would take us to a crystal therapy class and that's not the point. There's another question here. Translator. Greetings, thanks and welcome to Peru. He's happy to be here to listen to you, to confirm what they've been through. They've come to experience, they've come to open this experience on consciousness. We talked a lot about your process, about your own understanding of the moment you are living. You talked about childhood, about the book that gave me the knowledge of neuroscience, the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, and how all these books are related to neuroscience. It was a time in my life when I was consciously asking myself a lot, and I was deepening into these subjects. Your extreme knowledge of consciousness, we don't talk much about it here in Lima. You talked about the ayahuasca experience. I read the book also about the cosmic serpent, it's helped me a lot. Then I read the book of the golden flower, and in relation to what you say, I was in the heart of the heart. It was something deep, deep knowledge, as I tried to experience this state of subliminal consciousness, this divine consciousness to put a word. Okay. The question now, I understand that we are moving to a new stage, we have had a process that allows us, that we are taking another step to a new stage, so this is illusion and we are moving to something else, we are breaking free of any attachment, any identification, any beliefs. So we are in this moment, but still under the influence of this law of duality, this struggle of this duality, and we are all struggling to hold fast. So the question is, in concrete terms, what could you recommend that could stimulate us, keep us going? See you at the end of the conference to experience it, because it goes through the silence, it can't be a recommendation. As soon as it is lived, all the brothers and sisters who live it on the planet do the same work as I do now. That is to say that the interest is to spread the good news, but above all to give you the opportunity to live it, because afterwards, when you live it, your words may be different. Of course, according to your story, according to the content of your brain, of your heart, but in the end, the result is the same. This is what I called, but then you still need words. This is what I last named a few months ago. This multi or interdimensional spatial Agape resonance is a key, but it is not an intellectual key, it is something to be experienced. As soon as you live it, whether you like it or not, whether you're a musician, a singer, a garbage collector, the same, a sweeper, doesn't change anything. What emanates from this heart has nothing to do with my thoughts, has nothing to do with my illnesses. Even when I am angry, I have the right to be angry, has nothing to do with what I eat, and yet I'm well aware that there are foods, and I've been talking about it in dietetics for a year. The ketogenic diet, mushrooms, not hallucinogens, have their roles, because I repeat what I was saying, it's still nicer in this illusion of living a dream than a nightmare, we agree. It's better to be healthy and not have problems, but for some, it's the opposite. There are big problems right now, at all levels. But that's just what you're given to live with. Accept it and you'll see. Whatever happens, put behind you the perception. When you are sensitive, when you feel the energies, you see things, they are there, you do not take care of them. You just stay quiet, that's all. Translator. 4-5 days ago, I had an experience at sunrise. I was very aware of this reality of thinking. I feel this very complex time, it was beginning to dissolve, and that many of us had to influence that this was happening and that we were participating. I was participating with a lot of people in dissolving these elements of time, created by thoughts, and that it was a really defining phase. And there, as if by chance, you know that for the past 2 years, I have been deciding nothing. I go where I am called, without asking myself questions, because when you are free, you know that the intelligence of light and love will always do things better than you. That is indeed how it has been going for the past 2 years. We're at the beginning of this year, finally we are in February 2020, and we are in Peru, and in particular in the areas of Viracocha, on the gates of time, to show that there is no time. So, I don't know how it's going to be when we go there, but it's true that the brothers and sisters who called me in different countries, Tunisia, Brazil soon, Quebec, all countries, it goes with the story. But that's not me. People sometimes have the impression that Jean-Luc Young, ever. No, I do not know anything. I am, to follow, the evidence of the light, and if you accept that in your life, even for an illness, for a divorce, for a death, just behind, you will be flooded with love. Translator. The theme of this debate of experience, we have a common aspect, the reference of communication, that's correct. The problem I have now is that really and sincerely, all this intellectual knowledge, all these experiences of consciousness, cosmic snake, all the dimensions, this snake biting its tail, all these worlds I have traveled through, it's useless. Today, I say well today, it was not the case 10 years ago, 20 years ago, today, in the silence, in the embracing, in the instant, everything is there. Why complicate it? So, of course, I am still speaking in order to establish a dialogue that will prepare for communion and resonance. Simply in a meeting, we are together for 3 days, 4 days, a week, the preparation is done slowly and it happens naturally. We only have a few hours, so the best solution, after having dialogued as we do, is to place ourselves in silence, where I repeat, I do nothing, you do it alone. You do nothing, you are simply there, without expecting anything, without asking for anything, just embracing the unknown, really. It takes great humility. We have been prepared, by the 4 pillars, we have been prepared by Esho, laziness, that's exactly how it happens, not otherwise. This is a prerequisite that we did a little bit quickly, we talk about crystals, we talk about things and others, and then a little bit before the end of the conference, we're going to move on to the truth. I would also like to point out that you will have to differentiate what you will experience as energy, vibration, perception, expansion. It is a decoy of what will happen, it is a decoy, an error, a lie, but which makes you available, and the result will be within 2 days. That's why I do it at the end, because if I had done it at the beginning, for a conference, you would have been like that, body a little slumped, asleep, for the 2 hours, and you would have had a lot of questions for the others. If I do it at the end, the questions you keep and the answers will appear by themselves. That's how it goes, you see. Another question. Translator: Thank you. Welcome back. So with a group of friends, we're following the channeling that you've been doing since 2011. The interveners they were talking about around June, July 2012, the Earth was going to go through a big event, that something was going to happen. So we were doing everything that was indicated to do before, we were really following to the letter. After that, there was silence from you and the stakeholders, we didn't know what was happening. Meanwhile, spring was coming, there were cosmic dates with this state of vision where we had to stop, to move to another stage. But then there was a silence, that we knew nothing about you. What happened then? Ah, you don't know? Jean-Luc laughs. Sister. By the end of 2012, we had lost track of you, we didn't know where you were. No, there was nothing left. Sister. She wants to know what happened after the date. After 2012? Sister. Yes. Ah, it's very simple. Translator. She wanted to know what was happening on Earth, if it had anything to do with Earth. No, it had something to do with the French state, and the French justice system, which for 6 years, when, well, the channelings only started running again 2 years later, they forbade me to speak, to communicate, to exchange, that's it. Translator. They ask what happened with this event that was supposed to happen, that didn't happen, and so what happened with this event, finally? No, the event is now, the event is in progress, it wasn't in 2012. Translator. So the date was moved, changed, postponed? No. So the date was actually December 21st, 2012. But, listen carefully, in the script of the story, in the script of the dream, since everything has been written, absolutely everything, you have no free will, you just follow, we just follow, all of us, without any exception what is written. Everything has been written, even before the appearance of the source, from the first dream of the genetician mothers, because every dream has to end in nightmare to wake up. Now, what happened in this event that seems not to have taken place, whatever the event, when I talk about event, for me in my head, it is not necessarily Napier, it is not necessarily the tilting of the poles, it is something that literally comes to seize, and explode the consciousness to show it, to show us that we are not that. Today, wherever you look, we can see from everywhere on Earth that the economic system is dead, the Earth, so, of course, those who are dreaming will tell you that the Earth is ascending, it is ascending yes, in the absolute. I have explained at length that the Earth is the place where the first dream was created. You know, for those who have followed the story, it had been explained. I remind you that the crystalline nucleus of the Earth comes from Sirius, we are Sirius, here. The stars we see, it's like they say in Sumerian, the cosmos, in Sumerian it means cosmos, the snakeskin. There's no such thing. When I came out in May 2018, in my body of light, in a body of light, I went to the limits, outside, I'm not talking about my heart, but really in the projection of consciousness, I went to the Van Allen belt, to the limit of the solar system, and I saw that it was a plasma, a mirror. And that's where I saw that all the so-called archetypes, Jesus, Mary, Michael, the stars, the elders, Buddha, Mani, Hermesda, all these great beings had been in the truth. But in history, they were recovered. As soon as a being brings the good news, as soon as you create a movement behind it, a religion, the light is deviated. And I asked myself the question since I was borrowing at the time the body of a magnificent eagle, a white whale, my own body of light, of crystal, I could take any, what is called a being of light, I am a costume, it is as if I were putting on a costume. But it would never occur to you to identify yourself with the garment, that's the whole teaching of Bide. You are not this body is a bag of meat. Of course, it is to be respected, to be loved. Translator. When Serati spoke of the white letters, archetypes, too, so those archetypes are deviated. So by destroying the Van Allen belt, and I couldn't do it through a form, I couldn't do it through any archetype, whatever it was, because it was deflecting the light every time, and it was sending the light back to Earth, in a kind of cybernetic loop or space-time loop, which makes you loop back and forth on Earth. You're born, you die, you forget, you come back. So, of course, I've been working. Translator. This message from Sereti, the light and dark, does it continue? No. But no, since time doesn't exist. Consciousness is subject to time and dimensions. But we know very well, and I have lived it, of course, I am conscious of time, besides we arrive just late, so time passes, in the dream. There is neither time nor space. On the other hand, penetrating space, I am talking about space here, I am not talking in another dimension, puts an end to time for you, which is what we are going to do later. So in what Sereti said, in what was said by Ramatan, in what was said by Metatron, in everything that has been said, today with the benefit of hindsight, you realize one thing, that everything, absolutely everything, had been announced, but is taking place now, 7, 8 years after 2012. Why is that? It is not a mistake, it is not a mistake at all. I remind you that there were many brothers and sisters, of which I was a part at the time, even when I was released, who were waiting for something to happen. But if you are waiting for an event, you cannot be free. I have always said it, the event is you, it is us, and the way in which Agape reveals and lives, allows the awakening, and the actualization, the materialization literally of the event. And I do not care if it is Nepia, the explosion of the Earth, or of the solar system, because here it is not only about Nepia, but I remind you that we have dead stars that are in the solar system, we have a black hole, not in the center of the Milky Way only, but here, and the black hole is the truth. So the ego is going to call it nothingness. The I, those who are installed in illusion, self-contemplation of their own light, will say that I am the devil himself. I'm used to people who only express what they live in them, projecting it onto me, that's all. As I said in the preamble, I feel the energies, I feel the beings, since I was a child. So it is wrong to say that evil does not exist, it exists, it is very concrete here, it is part of the nightmare, that's all. And to say that, sometimes I need, for example, to act with the energies, with duality, for example, for someone who thinks he is possessed, who thinks he is or who really is, when I see a magnificent etching behind a person, then, of course, if the person is ready, in his heart, Agape resonance and it is over. But for the person who is enclosed in his own duality, who really lives this possession, this suffering, it is real for him. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to appeal. I'm going to do a ritual with Michael, with Christ, with Mary, where I take back the tools of the dream, but I am not fooled. But more often than not, if the brother or sister is sufficiently ready to let go, I don't need all this ritual and all this cinema, because it's cinema. But nevertheless, in the dream, the cinema acts. But today we are no longer there, and that I cannot explain it to you, once again, nor demonstrate it to you, but we can live it, just now, in a short while. What time are they coming to pick us up? We said 7 o'clock, or 7:30, didn't we say? Yes, so we still have 3/4 of an hour of questions. Sister, what should happen to the star Betelgeuse? Ah, you don't know? It exploded, but there's no time, there's no space. So of course, scientists will tell you it could happen now or in thousands of years. This is not true, since it was announced by the Nephilim themselves, when the dream was locked up, in the nightmare, because the imprisonment, the prison planet, is not a dream, it is a nightmare. We are living a nightmare. Even if you're in this unspeakable agape love, that you find in nature, when you go near the water, near the whales, near a brother or a sister with whom you resonate, you have to realize that you really have to be sick to be well in this world. As Krishnamurti said long before me, 80 years ago, it is really not a sign of good health to feel good in this society. Ah yes, but how do you do it, when you have a job, a family, that's exactly what you have to overcome. I'm not saying that you have to give up your job, your family, your children. I'm just saying that's what you have to go through. You're the one who wrote your screenplay, and the more disgusting and rotten it seems to you, the more certain you are that you wrote it that way. So who do you want to blame? The husband, the wife, the company? What do you want to accuse in the dream? No, accept the dream and you'll wake up. Accept the nightmare, which doesn't stop you. If, for example, I break my leg, I accept, yes, but then you still have to go and get a cast put on. But reverse the order of priorities. It takes 5 minutes, come on, a quarter of an hour. I'm exaggerating, but it's very quick. Yes. Sister. We told him in a sleep, in a dream. Charlie Blue says to you, Oma Amba Oma Om Soy. We said those words to him. Yes, it's vibratory. Now, to tell you what it means, I don't know. Last year, in February, around this time, you remember we had for those of you who were following this, we had the source language of mother geneticists, which makes sense, but I don't know what it means. The important thing is not to know what it means. It's about ego, it's about knowledge, it's about the person, it's about history. The important thing is what it feels like. That's very important. We had the example. JL looks at the screen. What does he say to me? Don't break your leg, you still have Machu Picchu to climb. Laughs. When I hit my leg. I changed my leg. That's what I mean. That it's so simple, it's childish, really. Today, today. Because the good one, times 0, it's everywhere, it's there. So yes, actually, last year I said yes, say yes to what is. It's Biden's phrase that I also repeat over and over again, and I use it every time, because it's certainly one of the most important phrases today. What must happen will happen, whatever you do, and what must not happen will not happen, whatever you do. It makes you even more available for life. And you have the right to be human, and you have the duty to stay in your simplest humanity. Smile at a child on the street, say shit when someone is bothering you. That's humanity, that's the truth. If you've had the opportunity to see videos of Biden when he was incarnate, there's quite a difference between our commander, who is so human with his white clothes, and Biden, who looked like a gangster. Sister. Of what? Gangster. Oh, you didn't see Biden with her dark glasses. And Biden was an outstanding businessman. He negotiated everything, he had fun. That's a far cry from Omri Michael Ivanov in his white outfit. It's a long way from Esho, who nevertheless created a magnificent sect during his lifetime, which didn't prevent him from being a Melchizedek for all that. Krishnamurti had said it, as soon as you want to organize the light, to organize spirituality, movements, associations, religions, gurus, you're wrong. True humility once again is not to belittle yourself. I have knowledge, I exploit it, I talk about it. I have sensations, perceptions, but the most important thing is not that, absolutely not. The most important thing is to be able to be human, with all its flaws, with all that state of spontaneity that is linked to Agape, where you actually become like a child again, really. For those of you who have known me for a long time, I have said it and I will say it again, in the space of 3 years I witnessed a total transformation of this sack of meat. I was still 50 kilos heavier. I have witnessed a total transformation of the mechanisms of thought. There's only one thing you can't escape, and I'm experiencing it right now. It's what we call astrological, not astral influences. The mechanics of the planets, that's life, that's what I'm experiencing right now. I am Aries, Mars has entered Capricorn, there are all the planetary clusters, Mars has entered Capricorn, where there was already Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, so it creates, in the scenario that is written, an energy of fire that arrives, of anger that is there. Besides, you see, I move all the time, but I can't help it, it's like that. At other times, well, I don't move at all, but that is not me, you see, I don't try to play you, the Zen person, like that. That's cinema. The real person doesn't need an orange or white outfit. There's no need to light candles, there's no need for rituals. Even if it's nice to light candles, it's good. No, but I have nothing against it, no, it's fine. But I don't need it, it doesn't mean it's not beautiful. It's very beautiful, okay, but you have to differentiate what is beautiful, it's aesthetic. I'm talking about crystals that they put there. You see, they put crystals with a little altar. I'm not saying it's negative or useless. On the contrary, I'm saying it's beautiful. It's part of the decor. I prefer that decor to a bad smell. Well, it's evident. As I was saying, in the dream it is better to live a dream than a nightmare. Joy is there too. I've often talked about joy. Joy is there, even when I'm angry. Ah well yes, especially with the influences that there are at the moment. But joy is always there, it just expresses itself independently of me. That's also acceptance, of suffering, of a grief you've experienced, of an illness, of a disorder of any kind. You know, when I say that the light has transformed me, it has transformed me, it has totally transformed me. I was afflicted with a hereditary disease. I did my thesis on this, my doctor's thesis. By the way, it has disappeared. Besides, medical professors don't understand anything about it, because the genes that code for this disease, it's a hereditary disease, they're still there. But the disease is no longer there. Today we know that DNA is nothing, and what is most important, it is what has been called epigenetics, what is around, the space around your living space. And in this living space, indeed, I prefer to have an altar, pebbles, crystals, prayers, rather than badness and bad smells. It's more pleasant to living, but it doesn't change what's there. Simply, when you're bothered by a smell, by anything, it doesn't take anything away from what's there. But it's still easier when everything is fluid. We learned about the fluidity of the unit back then, remember? The fluidity of today, through the abandonment to the light, which Enlil spoke of 11 years ago, the abandonment to the light, what I also called sacrifice, a true sacrifice. Where is the sacrifice? Well, when you have experienced it, you say, there is no sacrifice, because you return to the natural state. I called it sacrifice for the person, I called it sacrifice for the self, those who are installed in the presence as they say, in the white light. But they did not see that the white light was consciousness. Where does the white light come from? From the absolute, from what we are, what we call the central point that sees all the worlds unfold. As with some products, we were talking about theogons, iboga, mescaline, and especially salvinorin, and others, there's lots of them, DMT, psilocybers, whatever. You know that today, in neurosciences and in pharmacology, in hospitals, you have people in the United States, and especially in the Anglo-Saxon countries, you have a molecule called DMT, dimethyltryptamine, an injection, intravenously, in hospitals, not absorbed by the mouth, by the digestive tract, but in the veins. An injection at an extremely precise dose of DMT puts an irremediable end to any possibility of being depressed. It's proven, it's not stuffing, this is pure and hard science, we're no longer in the business of living. That's the truth. Brother. That is to say, it puts us in Agape, doesn't it? That doesn't put you in Agape, that, so, I couldn't develop, I'm simply saying, in every human being, as long as he's not free, you have the two stars there, attraction repulsion, good and bad. Here, you have two neurons that leave, two axons not two neurons, which come from the nucleus of the central thalamus, so you get into to simplify, you have the reptilian brain, which manages all the automatisms of the body, all the reflexes, all the behaviors, without your knowledge. It doesn't ask your opinion, it exploits you. For example, a child puts his hand on something that is hot, the hand comes off. But the hand comes off before he has had the desire or the idea to take it off. It's a reflex. What we call personality, particularly in its component called temperament, it's one of the components of personality. This temperament comes from the program, the reptilian brain, on which consciousness has no effect. When you inject this product, you will destroy the axon, that is to say the nerve fiber that starts in the reptilian brain, which is responsible for the idea of believing you to be an individual. It creates the idea of an I, a person, a body, but you have nothing to do with it. Neither your conscience has anything to do with it. Well, when you put an injection of DMT in, you're putting an end to the punishment circuit, and you're permanently in the reward circuit. By the way, The work that's been done in New Zealand, in Canada, I won't give you the names of the professors and everything, it's not a university environment, you'll take my word for it or you'll look for it yourself, has shown that real mystics, people who have had near-death experience, in the deepest stages, that is to say those who have gone through the holograms, you know when you come out of your body, you die, you see Jesus, well if you're Christian, you see Allah if you're Muslim, you see Buddha if you are Buddhist, and then you see Mom and Dad who have died, always younger and younger. That's bullshit. There's no such thing. They're holograms. They're holograms. There are only certain beings, who, when they have passed the tunnel have seen, for example, Christ, he is a Christian he sees Christ, and he sees Mom and Dad who are dead but much younger, well dressed. Not even 5% of these people pass through these so-called beings, because there is light behind, pass through the sun, and go behind the Sunday. So this is what is called in the original Kabbalah, the Ein Sephor, that is to say, what is prior to the light, the Absolute, the Parade Brahman. There they live the truth. The experiences of imminent death where most people stop, they see Christ, they see Mother and Father or Allah or Muhammad, well, Allah one cannot, no, Muhammad, they come back. But they know that death is not death, but it has nothing to do with those who have crossed the sun and gone to their homes. Besides, you have an American doctor, a very great neuroscientist, who has lived through this. So he does not use the words of Baidu, of Nizagidea, and he, moreover, had no more brain, all his grey matter had been eaten, so there was no more consciousness. And he came back, his brain was reconstituted in a week. So him, I can give you his name, because there are a lot of videos, he moves around a lot. And to top it all off, he was a neuroscientist who didn't believe in anything, he was a pure materialist. So of course he's not saying it's the Parade Brahman, he doesn't know what it is. But he says that after he saw his parents whom he did not know, he was adopted, after he saw his sister, he did not know that he had a sister, he went through all that, he melted into the light, what I call the white paradise, which is the ultimate trap, the self, but already today it leads to the Absolute, and he penetrated the Absolute. And there he said, well, there is nothing more, there is no more form. Yet it is not what is called the dark light, there is no entity, there is no noise, there is nothing. Well, that is where you are everything. And when you come back from that, well, you are never the same again. So I think we had some questions deep down. There's a hand raised over there. Sister, what's this doctor's name? Dr. Eben Alexander, and his book in French is called Proof of Paradise. It's a bestseller, it's sold thousands, millions of copies and there are lots of videos on YouTube. Sister, can we understand it? A holographic projection, how can we understand that? The Matrix, the creation, and I'm not just talking about the Earth, I'm talking about all of creation, is just a simulation, which moreover took place outside of time, and outside of space, and yet it unfolded through consciousness. As I say, consciousness is a projection, in the psychological sense, in the psychopathological sense itself. It is a real projection. Sister, there are many things that happen in the head. Yes, but afterwards it will happen in the heart, it will get better. Sister, there was a question. Yes, they're at the back since earlier. Sister, what is the point of the earth being imprisoned? What is the point? Well, it's very simple, and I've already said it, to turn a dream into a nightmare to see that all this never existed. That's the only point. Remember, time doesn't exist, space doesn't exist. It's all just passing. Not everything that passes is true. Only that which is unchanging is true. In Taoism, it's simply Tao, isn't it? Sister, why are there individualized beings? Why are we individualized? Because it is a fragmentation of the one consciousness. The creation, the intelligence of light, or cosmic intelligence, call it what you like, observes itself through billions and billions of eyes and consciousness. It is a fragmentation of consciousness. Individuality or individualization is a total nightmare. Nothing is separated, despite appearances. So it's of no interest. Sister, did religions do this? What? Ah, you're speaking in French, excuse me. Laughs. Sister, is it the religions that separated, that made the individuals? Ah yes, are the AYOUNs before religions, but they are the ones who created religions. Besides, Christ had said, do not make my words a religion. Of course, besides, there's a funny story that I like a lot. It's God and the devil walking together on the beach, and so wait, how does it happen exactly? It's God says, well, I'm going to create the way for people to get together, and the devil says to him, oh don't worry, I'll take care of organizing it. Yeah, once you organize, you're deluded. That's what Krishnamurti said, I didn't make it up, but it's the truth, when you live it you can only see that. So, of course, there's no question of going to live in a cave in the middle of the desert, no. You can only find yourself, remember, if you fully assume what is there. Remember, and I have said this long before, spirituality, beyond being a total fraud, is the only way that a human being has found to protect himself from the fear of death. You cannot die, you have never been born, what is born is illusion. But rest assured, what I am telling you, do not misunderstand it, I am not asking you to deny it or to go to a cave or I do not know where, since I insist heavily in telling you that it happens here, through your body, whether you are 20 or 80 years old, whether you are in perfect health or perfectly ill, it does not change anything. Now, the only question you have to ask yourself, really and concretely, and there you have complete freedom to answer it or not, basically, what is important to you? Is it to be well in this world, in one way or another, or is it to live what you really are? Well, the two are totally incompatible. So it's been said in different ways, no one can serve two masters at the same time, and besides, there is no master. There is only you. Agape love, which has been defined, is when, regardless of your personal, emotional, family, health, financial or work circumstances, you remain in the same equanimity and in the same radiance. But it is not you who decides, you cannot decide that, but you can decide to give up, to say yes, to pronounce your name followed by your first name as we said at the time, to embrace, to accept. It is not faith but it is not a belief, it is really a location of your consciousness within the four pillars, humility, simplicity, transparency that will allow you to live yourself and to live the truth. Remember the white paradise when it rocks, it is the absolute. When it topples over, the absolute manifests itself, there is the white paradise and then at the end there is fragmentation, there is your character, but you are not that character, but you are in it. You are not even the observer of that character. You remember when Biddy arrived in 2012, we talked about the witness, the observer, you're anterior to the witness, you're anterior to the one who sees, the one who perceives. You are the other, you are the totality of what appeared through consciousness in the dream of creation. Of course, even if as I said the body is transformed, the thoughts are transformed and everything, you remain totally human with the same crap as everyone else, the same troubles, the same joys, there is nothing extraordinary. The extraordinary is going to be in silence just now, in the embrace, in the availability. Not in cogitations, not in experiences. Which does not prevent you from experimenting. Sometimes, even the last time in Quebec we went into a shamanic trance with a shamanic drum, I love that. I also love the Tibetan bowl, but I'm not fooled because I'd rather live a shamanic trance than spend an hour in a traffic jam. And it's logical and that before living in 10 minutes and 15 minutes what I propose to live together. If there is one thing to remember beyond acceptance, the crossing of acceptance, of yes, the most important thing, I will use this word rather than humility, it is your humanity, your simplicity. You cannot be in love and not be available to anyone else, anything that comes up in your life even if it sometimes makes you feel horrible as a person and you cannot do otherwise, because it is a natural state, by the way, it has been called the natural state. As long as you don't experience that you are not in your natural state. You're in the dream state, even in the nightmare state, but again you will not end the nightmare or the dream. You have to let the dream go on, you have to let the nightmare go on and get rid of it. If you accept that what you have to live right now, accept, it does not ask you to believe it. Again, we're not in the belief system. I am trying to give you elements that will allow you to facilitate the experience of the truth, of what you are. It is frightfully simple, and, of course, the more I say that, the more I say it, the more the consciousness will get angry, but at some point, this consciousness, it will simply let go. You have nothing to do. As long as you think you have to do something, you will never be free. We're all going to be free, we're all going to wake up. But everyone has to go through the chaos of the world we live in, which is going to get bigger and bigger every day, on every level. Now, this is a concrete fact, it's not a projection, it's going to happen in a month's time. In 10 years' time? No, it's at this moment that you have the most possibilities, through simplicity, of living Agape. You know, today we have brothers and sisters who are living this natural state who have never felt an energy in their lives, they do not even know what energy is. You talk to them about Kekara, they look at you with eyes like that. And I would even say that it is much easier for brothers and sisters who have never set foot in spirituality to find themselves. Because as long as you're in spirituality, you're in the future, you're in history. We want to improve, we want to evolve, we want to transform ourselves, and we are trapped. You guys are perfect. Of course, ego will whisper the opposite, guilt, fear. Conscience will rebel. Whoever says that, it's not true, he's a devil. You'll be able to do as Christ did, forgive them because they do not know what they say, what they live. Once again, if I was the only one saying it and living it, it would be useless. Agape, not while he was alive, afterwards, because now his books are being translated all over the world. Agape, when he was alive, there were few people who came to see him at home. The source Hiddekan Baba, he never wrote anything. He just wrote his letter, the old letter of his death. He wrote a letter, he died on Valentine's Day. He wrote that he was going to do his Mahasamadhi, he never wrote anything. Agape never wrote anything, never. All of Agape's books are transcriptions of the audio. He never wrote anything. Sister, they were not conferences, they were meetings. Yes, they were meetings, but how many were in his room? 7, 8, 10 people. And he used to say at the time, and rightly so today, but when he said that at the time, good people were accorded, but no one understood. He said, my words can't fail. Oh sure, the people who came, who felt that there was something vast, that there was something pure that was there, but they couldn't live it, it wasn't possible. Today, it is not possible to live it because there are millions of us. And these millions of brothers and sisters who live it, it is not a egregor, it is an informational field. The informational time of zero time, which is a physical concept before being a lived reality. Zero time at the biological level, we know what it is. Zero time at the chemical level, at the physical level we know what it is. In biology, for example, time zero is the moment when the cell divides. It is called cell division. So I'm not going to go into biology. You have in all cells, imagine, my head is a cell, a nucleus, a cell nucleus that contains DNA, and on each side of it I have two little things that vibrate like that. On each side of the nucleus there is DNA in it, and when you have two objects vibrating like that in phasor position, in the middle there is time zero, and when a cell divides, that's exactly what it does. This aragonite, which is like this at the beginning, it vibrates like this. What does it contain? Rock crystal, silicon dioxide, which is used to provide the time base in our computers, our phones. So this is my nucleus with my DNA in it. The chromosomes form and come together in the middle and divide. That's time zero. Time zero is written in all our cells. Well, the same on a physical, chemical level, we could go very, very far. But here, what interests us is the zero time at the level of consciousness, that is to say the moment when the consciousness in all these components, unconscious, subconscious, conscious and superconscious, are really seen for what they are, a decoy, a trap, a total trap. Go, one last question. Sister, one last question? No. So, what I propose to you now is simply a moment of silence. You are simply sitting comfortably. Don't expect anything, don't stop anything for those who feel, for those who see. Let what you feel, see or perceive pass by, be available. If you believe you can unhook your legs and put your hands on your thighs quietly. We'll turn down the light if we can. So there you have it, in your head you expect nothing, whatever you feel, whatever you feel. So I was saying whatever you feel, perceive, see or whatever, you'll let it go. You're constantly. In those days Omriam used to say, you can tap your chest. We're not going to go that far. We're going to do that for a quarter of an hour, but you do nothing, you're on reception, on standby, and I repeat, I do nothing. I am in exactly the same reception, the same availability as you. This is not a meditation. We are seated so we are aware that we are seated, the position of the body, that we are in a group. Do not have any meditation objective. If you want to close your eyes, you are simply available and I will do the same thing. You do not ask for anything, I do not ask for anything, I do not expect anything. The only support you can possibly use to trap your consciousness in a way is to tell you, I am everywhere in the space of this room. That, your conscience, it likes that, nothing else, here we go. Silence. While you are lined up like this, you keep your eyes closed. Silence. You're letting it be what it is. You can, if you wish, also evoke what I called this Agape spatial interdimensional network resonance, if you need words. Silence. We stay like this for a few more moments. Silence. Whenever you want, you can open your eyes to be there at your own pace. Silence. Thank you. Before we part ways, I'm not going to ask you what you've or haven't been through. Just remember that if something happens, pay a little attention to the 48 hours that you're going to pass. And remember one thing, and I will end with these words today, when you experience it, if you are not already experiencing it, you will only be able to recognize yourself. It is unstoppable. It is the same recognition for each brother, each sister who is living it. Humility, simplicity, acceptance and life. Be present in everything that life asks of you without any exception. If it is the stars, the planets that influence you, accept it, you can do nothing about it. If your child dies, accept it, you can do nothing about it. There is a great freedom behind that. I also called it a great obviousness. And remember, above all, that absolutely everything, whatever the sometimes detestable appearances, is exactly there for you. It is exactly what you need. Accept it, it's over. You can't be looking for each other since you already are. You're here even though you're going through a lot. This is where you wake up, it is not elsewhere, and when you're awake in quotes, you can only say to yourself, but of course, it's always been there. It's just as by the needs of society life, of society itself, of conditioning, it's called the transgenerational. When a baby is born, it does not know that it is called by such and such a name, it is by the force of hearing its first name that it identifies with its first name. If there were not this form of constant education in all continents, then the child would remain free. The name freezes in form, and we saw last year in the Canary Islands in April, May, last year, that it is exactly through that name and that first name, that is to say, our identity on paper, that is the key. Everything else you can, of course, use it, talk about tarot cards, crystals, astrology, energy, but do not be fooled. What you really are, what we really are, doesn't need this at all, but this world needs everything else. If you feel that you must do an Evana to St. Teresa, do it, it is not contrary to the light, as soon as you are no longer fooled. Don't oppose anything. I have told you, temperaments, habits, the body transforms itself. So of course, I talked about nutrition, about neurosciences, because it gave a framework of action for the person, because it is, as I said, it is important to have a person who is as functional as possible in relation to your capacities and in relation to what is written. You can just embrace it. The more you think about this word embrace, the more you'll notice that there is evidence, even in the things that are contrary to this evidence, that happen in all the lives available to everyone: annoyances, delays, disputes, taxes, society. Play the game, there again, problem of acceptance, and you will see clearly. When I say you will see clear, you will see that there is nothing to see, and everything that is seen, even in the most subtle worlds that are, also belongs to the dream. In any case, as it is written, you have no choice. It all depends on what I will call a quantum threshold. When enough of us are between quotes to see the dream at the time, the dream will no longer be there. So it doesn't matter if it's Betelgeuse, Napier, the dead stars, the perfect virus that appeared. Now I'm speaking as a doctor. The perfect virus is the virus that leaves no survivors. That's exactly what it is. So whether it's him or something else doesn't matter anymore. I'll end with these 3 words: life, love and smile. Even if it gets stuck in your throat sometimes, it doesn't matter. When you smile, you use a number of muscles. It's real, and above all, you're going to release something in your brain, a very special neuromediator. It's not dopamine, it's oxytocin. This is what happens when a mother breastfeeds her baby, when you take a brother or sister in your arms, really without any sexual or emotional connotation. You trigger the same thing. Thanks to you and maybe some of the people who are here, the group, I think maybe. Sister. March 6th we got back. I would also like to tell you, as I said, that we are going to the time gate, to Ayamera, and that this day is going to be extremely important. I know that I am not the one who decided. Why, I do not know more, but I know that this day is going to be important. Sister. What day is it? I don't know, exactly. Can someone tell us when the time gate is? Sister. The door of time. In our program, the group, we read the program and we forgot it. We're going to a requiem and it's going to be turn on. Yes, turn on, turn on. Thanks to the listeners, too. Through Jean-Luc Young. Les Transformations. English Revised Translation. LMF.